there and you click on that. If you haven't created anything yet, it's going to look slightly different. These are some modules that are already there, but there's a couple different ways. This right here says you can drag and drop modules to a folder, or if you think of it as a bin that I just kind of added there. But could you always come to the top where it says add module? So I'm going to click on that. And you're going to give your module a name, any name. Again, how you choose to organize is up to you. And this one, we'll just call it a sample. And then there's two things I want to touch on real quick before we add this module, which is the lock until and the prerequisites. And essentially what you're doing is kind of just saying, hey, before I get my students get access to this module, here are some things that they need to do ahead of time. We're not going to get into all of the details, but just thinking about students may have to complete, for example, if it were weeks or maybe if it was units, they have to complete this prior to moving on to the next one. And lock until kind of gives you that same feature in terms of you may say that it's not available until blank date. So these are just two extra ways that you can kind of say, I'm setting up this module, but I don't want my students to have access to it until a certain point. So I'm going to uncheck that and I'm going to click add module. And when I did that, just like my other options that you see there, it's just going to drop it down to the bottom. So these are just shells. So you can see that I had a social studies one that I was laying out, science. Again, how you choose to organize it, completely up to you. But just understanding that creating that module just created that blank space. Now you could add by coming up to where I see the plus icon, just like I added a module, you could add different documents, you could add different assignments, you could add different things to this. But the beauty of some of the things with Canvas's interface is it does allow you to drag and drop. So I'm real fast just going to show that. I'm going to slide my screen over just a bit and just say if there was a PDF or some other attachments that maybe are on your desktop, you could simply just drag those and drop those into there and know that that document now will be accessible and viewable to my students. If you didn't want to go that route, but instead you wanted to add some assignments that are from Canvas's infrastructure, come again to the plus symbol. And these are the different things that modules allow you to add. So you may be wanting to add assignments or quizzes or files or any various things. And once you do that, you're able to place them inside of your module. So let's say, for example, we're adding an assignment. Click right here and give it a name. This is, again, just pulled it up for me, practice an assignment. The indentation feature is just a way for you to kind of organize it. Just like you can align far to the left, it just basically says for students, when they're seeing the layout of your modules, if there's something that they wants to be indented a little bit, you have that in different levels of indentation. I'm going to click add item. And there you go. The item that I just somewhat created is in my module. You could click add module again, and you could click something different. Let's say, for example, hey, this time I wanted to insert a quiz into my module. Same thing, come to the brackets. So that way you could insert any of your quiz names. So give it a title and add item. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding different things to the shell, if you will, of my module. Big thing here is that you understand that the idea of things are published. That document that I inserted automatically published there. But any of the times when you're wanting to say, hey, for example, let's say I'm still working on this practice assignment. I don't want it to be available just yet. If it's not published, students wouldn't be able to have access to it just yet. One way that you could quickly ensure that all of these things inside of the shell of my module are published is simply coming up here. So this is now talking about not just the individual assignment or individual quiz, but rather the actual module itself. And by clicking publish, it automatically changes all of those little check marks in the actual module to being published. So those are just some ways to add things to modules. Again, how you choose to organize is up to you. I'm going to go to one that's already completed so that you can understand from the perspective of a student. So when they enter the module, they do have to progress from each of the assignments. And you could change the order very easily. Let's say, you know what, I don't want that quiz to pop up with the third thing. Instead, I want that quiz maybe at the front end, just so I can do some formative assessment to see maybe potentially where my students are, what they're thinking. And then you could have that first. So again, it's very easy to rearrange the order. But once you have that set and published, the students are going to be able to view and access it, and it's going to be in the manner in which you have it organized here. So let's go to a different module. So in this particular one, if I click on modules, I'm going to see some of the different modules that are there. I'm going to click on this one. Let's try this from the student view and then we'll see so you can get a better idea. So from student view, which is what I came to on the side, you can come to modules and students will see your modules that you have available. But once they enter into this, they're going to have to go down to the bottom where it says next. So each time they're wanting to progress from that first assignment or activity that you have structured in that module to the next, they're kind of stuck moving forward or progressing through the particular way that you organized it. So it's not as if they have the ability necessarily to bounce to each of these different things. It's how you choose to organize it, the layout, that they're going to be able to access some of these things. So again, modules are just a way for you to organize your content and a way for students to be able to interact with the various things depending upon the order that you have it structured. Adding things to the modules can get quite extensive, and you have a lot of different options in terms of what you can add. We just showcased the opportunity for you to be able to add some of the things that are there. In a few moments, we're going to take a look more specifically at quizzes, how you can build those quizzes and how you can place them there. So I think that's sometimes some of the confusions that people experience, is the fact that, well, so I'm making these quizzes, for example, or I'm making some of these assignments, or I'm making some of these, for example, discussions, which we'll touch on later. I'm not necessarily sure where are those housed. So they are necessarily housed wherever you have them. But if you're wanting students to interact with them at certain moments in time, you're going to probably place those into your individual modules so that your quiz or your discussion or your assignment, whatever those things happen to be, they will experience and interact with it as they progress through your module, the way that you as the teacher chose to organize that. I think that's the gist on modules. Obviously, we can go a lot more in depth, but I think everyone hopefully has a better understanding that those are in fact folders and the way that you choose to organize your course.
All right, so we're gonna move on to a brief overview on assignments. So let me go ahead and share screen and hope that I picked the right one. Okay. Oops, that's not the right one. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna do it from a student point of view. So these are pretty much empty assignments, just showing you the different types that we offer here. So I'm just going to click on this one. This one's for text entry. So as a student, you're going to click submit at the top. And then you could see right here that you would, it's a text entry. So you would just go ahead and type in your text, and then you would click at the bottom, submit assignment. Okay, so that one's pretty simple, straightforward. You go back. The next one is video submission. And well, mine says resubmit because I've done this over and over, but it would just say submit assignment at the top. And then down here, there's a button that says record upload media. So they would simply just click on that. And then oh, hello. So you could see me in my office right now. So they could start recording and then they could review it before they submit it. And I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. And when they're done, they just submit the assignment. Okay. Let me go back. Let me move this out of the way. That's better. All right, so the next one is file upload. So maybe they're working on something on their computer and you want them to actually upload it from their computer. They would submit assignment again, and then down here they would choose file. And they would just find a file on their computer to upload there. And then they would submit assignment as well. Okay, let's go back. Last one. External URL. Maybe you're having the students do some sort of research and you want them to submit a URL of something they found on your topic. Again, they would they would submit and they would enter their URL right here, and then they would submit assignment right there. Okay, so simple as that. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to actually create those so that you could be more specific with your students when you do assign things. So from the assignments tab over here on the left, I simply go to the top right, it's plus assignment or add assignment. So I click that, I give it a name. So I'm just gonna call this sample. And we suggest giving them instructions because especially if they're going to be doing these assignments without you, you want to have clear instructions and what your expectations are of them. So you would just type in your instructions here. And then we talked about the rich text editor here, so that's familiar to you. You can assign it a certain amount of points. If you had groups, you could assign it to certain groups. You could choose how the grade is displayed right here. And your submission type. So you can choose, just like I showed you samples earlier, we had text entry, website URL, media recording, and file upload. You can click all of them, but if you want them to just do one type to avoid confusion, then just pick one. So it's up to you, really. Depends what your expectations are. Okay, you can choose how many times they can attempt to complete this assignment. So I suggest in the beginning, give them a little bit of grace and maybe a few tries to submit it correctly, but you can limit it if you want. Okay, also group assignment here. You can allow peer reviews and all of that good stuff. And don't forget at the bottom, don't forget to save. And if you're ready, then you could save and publish. All right, so I know we could spend a lot of time in assignments, but that's just the basic types that we have here. And then in the next sections, they're gonna go over also other kinds. But before I move on to that, I just wanted to show you something that was shared with us that we're gonna just pass along to you, just planting seeds in your mind, because as you start to plan for instruction with your kids, we really wanna make sure that we're complying with the minutes that are expected of us. So I'm going to post that right now. Right here. Okay, so to be in compliance, it says right here, members are to design lessons that meet the minimum daily instructional minutes. So I know your mind might not be ready for this yet, but we just want you to keep it in mind because this is a requirement and we're working towards this. We know, just relax. Next week, we are offering so many chances for you to come on and get trained on how this might look and how this applies to you. But here are the minutes right here. I think it was emailed yesterday by our director. So this is the total minutes. Right here, total. Don't add these together, okay? So total minutes required based on grade level. And from there, this is how much has to be live. Okay, so as you're starting to plan what this looks like for you, just keep these numbers in mind. And then next week, we will be providing trainings. The district will be providing trainings on how this could look for your class. All right, so just so that you know that's coming next week. All right, we didn't want you to be surprised. All right, so I hope I didn't miss out. I know, Ricardo, we shared a little bit of a sample, but I know we're going to be going over that next week. Did you want to touch upon it now, or do you want to just wait till next week?
We can cover it next week if you want to.
Okay, yes. We just received some new information, so we don't want to show you something that we're not certain of. We're being given instructions on how they want this to appear, so you'll know more next week. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing screen at this point.
Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen really quick, and I'm just going to show you, Teresa went over the different types of assignments that we can do inside of Canvas, but we also have some amazing tools that we can use to create assignments using external tools. So I'm just going to go to assignment, that's where I am right now. And then just like Teresa did, I'm going to go to assignments right here, and I'm going to create an assignment. Right next to it, you have something called groups. Teresa kind of touched on it. Think about groups as categories in your area's gradebook. And if we have time, we'll talk about that later. But notice how my assignments, I have a group that is worth 30%. I have a group for my essays that are worth 40%, and then my quizzes are worth 30%, so they equal up to 100%. So I'm going to create an assignment. And over here, again, let's just give it a name. It's gonna call it test, it doesn't matter. We talked about the content editor. I'm gonna give it points, so 10 points for this. Here's the assignment groups that I talked about a second ago. So this is just gonna go under assignments. This depends on how you create your groups, homework, assignments, essays, right, whatever you wanna call it. And then Teresa showed you how to do the text entry, the website, and so on and so on. But right here, under submission type, you have another tool that it says, if you wanted the kids to just do paper, you would just do on paper, and the kids will have to submit some kind of paper, right? But that probably is not gonna be an option right now. But external tool. And when you click on that, it gives you the option to open this little link over here. And inside of here, depending on what the district has added and what you have added to, you're gonna have some options. So if I wanted to add something from CK12 per se, I'm not gonna spend much time on it, but I just want to show it to you. So it's gonna look for CK12, because it's integrated with our Canvas. It's gonna look for it, and it should load. I can go ahead and look, maybe I wanna do grade 7. Okay, it's gonna show me all the activities. And the great thing about doing it this way is that it actually will put it on your speed grader. So that's just to show you how the CK12 works. I'm not gonna spend much time on it, but also you have the ability to do Flipgrid. And the great thing once you integrate Flipgrid is that the whole entire Flipgrid is done inside of Canvas. Okay, so I'll show you that really, really quick. So I'm going to pick Flipgrid, hopefully. Let's select that right now. Okay, and let me just save, just for this particular one. And because you integrated Flipgrid with Canvas, the way Robert showed you, so now inside of Canvas, I actually have the ability as an educator to just log into my educator account. Microsoft knows that I have already integrated this with my Flipgrid. It's going to go in there and it's going to open my grid for this class. Think about grid as your class and each topic under it, under the grid as assignments. So now over here, I can change this topic detail. I can add more topics and so on and so on. And again, the kids can record a response and it goes into your speed grader. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like, okay? Let me get out of here really quick. Let me show you the other type of assignments. Just create a new assignment really quick. Tests, okay, 10 points. External tool, I'm still there. So we did a couple of them. But what I want you to see, okay, just really, really quick, if you have never used the Google Assignments inside of Google Classroom before, we will definitely recommend that you stay with this when it comes to Google. It's called Google Drive Cloud Assignments. And I'm just going to click on it, okay? It's going to open your Google account, okay? So now I just wanna put a file in there and maybe I wanna attach a Google slide that I want my kids to work on. So this is what it's going to do, basically what Google Classroom did for you before. It's going to create 30 copies of that slide for my kids to actually go and write on it. So I'm going to say submit, okay? So I'm ready, I did it. I'm going to select, okay? Everything is fine. I can sync to SIS. We'll talk about how you can sync grades to Aries, hopefully if we have time today. I can give it a due date. So I want this to be due next week. And then you also have the ability to do available and until. Okay, so available, maybe I want the kids to be able to see my assignment starting today, okay? If you do not add an until, the kids can still submit the assignment as late work, so it will still be submitted after the 14th. But if I come in here and I say, I wanted to stop appearing or allowing submissions on the 14th, I can check that, and now the kids cannot submit anything, so there won't be an ability to submit late work if you add an until right here. So I'm going to save right now this, and you're gonna notice what's going to happen. So now, when my students are looking at this, the first time they do it, oh, interesting. I used the wrong template probably. I'm gonna have to do it again so you guys can see it. Let me just go to one that actually, I already did it. I probably used the wrong template. I probably used one of my students' one. So let me just go to the right one. Let me just go in here really quick. Sorry about that. Let me go to my animal project right here, which is, let's use this one. Here it goes. So once you have created it, you're gonna notice that the assignment is going to be right there. And in this case, I just used the doc and I said, please type your answers below. And the kids can come in here. Each of them has their own copy and they can actually type the answers. And when they're done, they can just submit the assignment. And you'll be able to, again, grade it on SpeedGrader and be able to put the points. Someone asked that question before. The Google Slides look too small right here. If you go on top and you look at the name, you can click on it and it will open it in a new window. I don't know if that's a best practice for our little ones because you're taking them out of Canvas and opening another window, but that's the way you can see it on a different window. So this is how you would do Google Cloud assignments. Again, every student gets their own copy and they can type on a doc, on sheets, on Google Slides. The only thing that does not work with Google Cloud assignments is forms. Forms will not send the grades to SpeedGrader, and therefore you can send them to your gradebook, okay? Everything else works except for forms. But you can still use forms like I showed you before, but it will not send the grades. So that was Google Cloud assignments. There's one more thing that I want to show you. With the external tool, let me just call it test. I have to do it every time or won't let me do it. Points. You also have another tool down here that is called Google Assignments, and you have it twice. And let me explain why you have it twice. The first one, it's attached to hlpnet.net, and the second one is attached to your hlpusd.k12.ca.us. So most of us have a lot of our files under the HOP USD. So just go to the second one. We've asked NCS to add the HOP net here in the HOP USD. It's showing in another place, but it's not showing here. But just so you know, the second one is the HOP USD. I'm going to click on it. And again, if you have never used Google Assignments in Google Classroom, I would just stay with Google Drive Cloud, okay? But if you have used Google Assignments and you love originality reports and the ability to use rubrics inside of Google Classroom before, then you can do that, and you can do it inside of Canvas without using Google Classroom, okay? So I'm going to click Google Assignments. Notice that it's going to look and it's going to say, is this you right here? So this is my drive that I want to use. I'm going to say continue. And it's called Google Assignments again. It's basically your assignment that was in Google Classroom without a stream, okay? So it is not Google Classroom. I'm going to say continue, and then you have probably seen this before if you used it last year or in previous years. So again, you have the option to use originality reports. You can click that on. You want to attach files just like you did before. I'm going to click. It's going to open my drive. So you are used to this if you've used this before in the other LMS that we used last year, okay? So I'm just going to pick any file. It doesn't matter. I'm going to pick this one right here. I'm going to say add. Okay, and then notice that it says each student will get their own copy right here. I can attach more documents if I want to. I add the points, make sure that you do the same points that you did on the assignment in Canvas. I can do a due date in here too, and I have the ability to add rubrics. So if I created rubrics last year for this type of assignments, when we use the other LMS, I can go in here and I actually have access to those rubrics. So I'm just gonna pick, it doesn't matter what I pick, I'm just gonna pick a rubric. And it's going to throw it in there. And now when I create the assignment, it puts it inside of Canvas. So when kids go and do this assignment, I'm just gonna save and publish. Notice that it does a couple of things. It's gonna load right now, it's loading. You have the ability to do speed grader, which is great. Nobody has submitted anything yet, so I can see it. I can grade inside of Speed Grader, which is the Canvas grading tool. But I also, doing it this way, have the ability to grade outside in Google Assignments. If you have seen the ability to use comment banks and the ability to use originality reports, we'll show you that later. But this is the way you will use Google Assignments. So just to kind of summarize, if you have never used Google Assignments in the other LMS last year, I will completely stick with Google Drive Cloud Assignments, okay? And then I know it was very, very fast, and I covered it really, really fast. We can probably spend hours just talking about assignments, and I know eventually we're gonna do that, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how you can use the different types of external tool assignments, okay? Thank you. Robert, I think Robert's next.
Okay, so next we're going to go over quizzes, and there are two types of quizzes we're going to go over. I'm just going to show you the basics and then maybe a little bit of what kind of stands out between each type of quiz. So let me share my screen. Okay, so when you're in quizzes, let's go ahead and select the quiz tab. And once that loads up, you can have the little blue box here to add a quiz. And then you have two types of quizzes. So the classic quizzes and the new quizzes, you know, they differ as far as the types of questions that they have and the look and the functionality. I believe they created this new quizzes just to have different types of questions. Like here, it mentions hotspot or matching, and there's some other stuff too. One thing to mention, which is kind of cool for Canvas, is that they have an item bank. So you can create a bunch of questions and have different banks that you can kind of pull from, either randomly or you can select them individually. But you know, when you create a quiz, then you can just pull from those questions that you've already made. So let's go ahead and go into Classic Quiz for right now. And once you're in here, you have these two tabs. One will be the details for your quizzes, and then you'll actually use this second tab to start making the questions. So I'm just gonna call this Classic. Oh, I'm gonna call this Classic Test. And then you know you could use the rich text editor, or you can have some other options to like shuffle answers, set a time limit, how many times you want to let them try, if they get to see their answers or not, and you know who you want to assign it to. But I'm gonna go ahead and hit save once you're done with all that. Not ready to publish yet, but we can hit save. And then we're gonna go back to edit so I can start putting in my questions. So under questions, if you want to start to build up your question bank, what you would do is you would go to new question group. And then from here, what you're going to do is you're going to link to a question bank. Or I'm sorry, if you wanted to select from a bank, you're going to link question bank. So this quiz is now being linked to one of the the banks that you've made. And let's see, this one has 7 questions. So I'm going to select this one and select the bank. And now these questions will be pulled from this bank. So I'm just going to hit create group now. And it has 1 question will be made from this bank. If I wanted to find other questions, you can actually look at your banks here and pick the questions out that you would want to add in, and then add those questions into your quiz, and now you can have more questions from your banks there. Okay, let's see. In order to start creating those banks, I want to go back to quizzes. Actually, no, I'm gonna go back to questions so I can get rid of this one. There it is. Okay, and I'm gonna again hit new question group. And then let's see here. Oh, and then we get to actually pull random questions. So let's see here, random questions. I'm gonna go to create group. Sorry, I think I already did this once, but let's just see. Where is it? Where is somewhere around here? Create group. It's not giving it to me. There's a create group that should show up. Let me get back to you guys on that one. Okay. And then when you're done, just go ahead and hit save and publish. And then you also have options to moderate the quiz up here as well, which gives you the ability to set individual students, like times for their quiz or the amount of attempts that they'll get. And if you had more than 1 student, you can kind of select that student or multiple students and change those options for them. Okay, I want to go now to the new quizzes. Let's kind of show you the difference between those two. And let's see, when you go to new quizzes, again, you're going to enter in the name of your quiz. So I'm going to do this new test. And again, points, pulling from the external tool if you would need anything from there. Again, setting the amount of attempts and the due dates. But this one doesn't have that other tab up here. So you just have to go down and hit save. And then once you're done with the details, then you can add in all of the questions. Okay, so for example, here, I'm going to add in a question on this little plus sign, and it's going to give you all the different types of options. One question that we get a lot is, can I have a question that has like multiple answers, and then for each correct answer that they select, the points will add up for them? And I'm going to say no, but there is something close to that, which is under, oh, not under matching. Hold on, not under matching. It's under multiple choice. And when you select multiple choice, you'll enter in your question. I'm just gonna type in a question here and the answers. But you have this option down here that says vary points by answer. And what that kind of lets you do is you can set the right answer. So let's say like the first answer is totally correct. I'm gonna give them 5 points. But maybe the second option is a little bit, it's close, it's okay. But so if they answer this one, I'm just gonna give them like 1 point. So that's about as close as we get to adding up multiple answers there. And then you also have the option to shuffle the choices for each of the questions. If you wanted to add that question to a item bank, you would do it right here. So I want to add this to one of my question banks. I'm going to select this. Oh, I got to finish doing this one. Okay, hold on. D, and the first one was A. Okay, so now that that question is done all the way, I can add it to a bank. I got to title it as well. Okay, let's title this test. Okay, I got to fill out everything. All right. Add to bank. And then either to an existing bank, which I can select if I've already made one, or if I want to start creating a new bank, you would just put it there. Okay, and then let's see here. Once I have those banks done, again, you can create a quiz from there. And for that, you would just go to item banks. And then we'll select the bank that you have. And then again, you can add in the questions from that bank by hitting the plus sign here. And so this question would go in if I wanted to. But then you can also pull randomly. So that means that like every student that got a quiz, I believe, would get a different question. It's just going to randomly pull from your entire bank if you hit this option right here. So once you hit it, you'll see it pop up over here. And then I'm going to select it. So now from that bank that I picked, I can either use all the questions or I can randomly select questions. And so let's say, I want to randomly select 2 questions from that bank, and then each question will have 1 point, and then I'm going to select done. And it'll randomly pull, once the quiz is made, it'll randomly pull from that bank. Now, I think a good part about that is, some teachers have asked, what's the point of banks? Well, you could have like each bank be like a different standard. And then if you wanted to create a quiz from that standard, you can just randomly pull things, give that test, and then you would have data on how your students are doing on just that one standard. Okay. All right. Let's see. 2 other questions that I like for here are the stimulus. The stimulus question actually lets you pull like a text from the internet or wherever you would want to do it. So you would hit title, and we'll do test, and I'm just going to put test for all of these. But what you would do is you would find let's say a paragraph from online. So let me just kind of copy something here. And I would paste it in there for the students to read. And then I'm going to, let's see, if we can add stimulus, add a stimulus. And then once the stimulus is added in, now I can start adding questions. So what'll happen is that this, text will pop up for your students. They can scroll through it and they will answer the questions on the side. I think very similar to the online testing that they have at the end of the year. Okay, so that's kind of a neat feature to have there. And then lastly, one more type of quiz is found under Studio. This is where you can make a video quiz. So let's select Studio over here on the side. And I believe someone asked about creating a YouTube quiz. So if they found a nice YouTube video, they can create a quiz out of that. And you would do that by adding this, hitting this add button up here. Once I hit that, I could find the video on YouTube, and I could paste it there, and it'll pop up in my studio. Okay. But to create a quiz from here, and you can see this video over here, it's got this little rocket that lets me know that I've created quizzes from this video. And if I wanted to create a quiz from the video, I'm gonna go ahead and hit these 3 dots, and the quizzes option up here, pops up. I've already kind of tested this out a few times, but we can add in a new quiz. Again, we'll title this quiz test 3. Enter a description, and let's get started. Okay, so here's my video, and you see this little plus sign down here. Once you hit that, it'll insert 3 types of questions when you hit that button. So I'm gonna hit play. and I'm just talking and introducing myself. But once I hit pause, then this plus button pops up. And when I select that, I'm offered 3 types of questions: multiple choice, true, false, or even a multiple answer. So if I select this, then it's going to give me the question. So I'm going to put just hi, and the answer will be true. Enter in any feedback you would want, and then click save. And then if I hit play, it'll keep playing. I could stop it again and enter in another question if I wanted to. When the students are watching this back, it'll play, and as soon as it gets to that point, the question will pop up. It won't let them move on until they've answered that question. They could always rewatch that segment if they missed the question or if they missed the answer. So I'm gonna hit done. And then that should save to my studio. Now, when you assign this, or how to assign it, is you go into your courses, and I'm going to assign it just as a regular assignment. And you would access this from the external tool. And scroll down, look for Studio. And there we go. And then you're going to look for that video with the quiz. So after you select it, it's going to ask you, do you want to just standard embed, which is just the video by itself without the questions, but make sure that you select video quiz embed. So that way it'll bring up the questions for you. And if you have more than one type of quiz on here, it'll give you a drop-down menu to select the quiz that you made. And then you can embed that into the assignment that you made. Okay. And then save and publish, and the kids will be ready to go. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, so the next section that we're going to go over is communication with your students through Canvas. So the first place I'm going to go, oops, I need to share my screen. Time. There we go. This out of the way. All right, here we go. So I'm here in Canvas right now, and on the very left, you see an icon for our inbox. So you click on that, and then from here, you can create a new email, or well, somewhat an email right here where it says compose new message. I would click on that right there. I would select the course that I'm trying to communicate with. I say Spanish 2. And then in this section, you would choose who you want to send it to the teachers, to certain students or all the students, certain sections within the course. I'm just going to say teachers right now. Here's the one teacher right there. And of course, you just add your subject and then whatever you want to say. You can also, if you're sending to numerous people, you can also send as individual message to each recipient, so then they're not getting it as an email to everybody. So you can click on that if you want to. Down at the bottom, you can also add a file attachment if you want. And you can also, if you want to record a video, then you could, again, you could record a video and send that to them. And students can do that as well. They could record and send to you. Maybe they're having a problem with something and they want to demonstrate what's going on. So that would be a good thing that you can do. So you could hit send and then it will show up in his inbox. Okay, another way to communicate with the students is through your announcements. So when you're in a course at the very top over here, you can click on announcements. So if you're familiar with Google Classroom, this is kind of the equivalent to the stream that you have on Google Classroom, where you can just put any announcements that you want the kids to know. So you would simply go up here and you would click on announcement. Give it a title. Maybe you're welcoming them. Welcome. Whatever message you want to say. And then here's the rich text editor again, so you can add any pictures and links and things like that. And then you can decide who to post it to. Do you want it to all sections in this course or just certain sections if you had sections? Down here, you can choose when to post. as well. And then you just hit save, and then that will appear for your students. Okay. Oh, it's not doing anything. Okay, so I also wanted to show you something that is very useful as well. Right here, if you click on your account and you go to notifications, this is very useful because I'm actually a student in Ricardo's class, and I get notifications every single day about how I'm doing in that class, which is I'm not doing very well. So you can right here, you can control what you get notifications for. So if you don't know what these mean, the key's up here, so it'll notify you right away if you have the check mark. It'll send a daily summary with a little clock. With a little calendar, you'll get a weekly summary, or you can X don't send me anything. So there are so many options here. I'm not going to go through them all, but you could just go through them and see which ones you actually want notifications for. So that's something really useful also. There's another thing very, very useful as well, and it's discussions. And Gabriel actually did a video on this, so he knows so much more than I do at this point. So he's going to share that with us right now.
Sure.
There you go.
All right, give me a moment to share my screen and then we'll get started. Okay, so when you come over to your screen, obviously, let's just say you're on your home page. To access discussions, you're just going to come on the left-hand side over here where you see it say discussions. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier, and I'll point out again, is sometimes for some of these icons, you see the little I with an slash through it. And that's just to indicate that either one of two things. One, you don't have it activated so that students aren't going to see that when they log into your actual course. Or two, you haven't added anything just yet. And in my case, that's the problem. So I'm going to click on discussions. And if you're familiar at all with any type of social media platform, for example, like Facebook, you've seen before there's messaging threads where people are commenting and then other people are responding. That's in essence really what discussions are. And I think it's a really great place for us to promote more of that student-to-student interaction. We want students to be able to have conversations with one another, interactions with one another, obviously about the content that we're trying to teach. So here, if you have the screen, you'll see that there isn't anything just yet. And to create a discussion, it's not that difficult. We're just going to come, just like we've done for a lot of different things, up to the top where you see it say plus or add discussion. Give your discussion a name, whatever you want to call it. So this one will be called sample, and you could type in whatever you want. One of the things I did mention in the video, especially as we're starting to get to know our students, and they're trying to get to know not only each other, but they're also trying to build some relationships with you as the teacher, and also understand navigating the platform. You might have something simple that you're not even trying to grade, that just kind of trying to get everyone's feet wet with the interactions of discussions, and also kind of making sure we learn a little bit more about each other. So you could just type in, for example, tell me a little something about you. Or as we learned earlier, you could even have a video. And so I think a lot of times it's very powerful for students to be able to see other media formats in addition to obviously text. So you could come to the top, you could record yourself asking a question if you were going to record through the little browser like we talked about earlier. And you could record either a voice memo, or if I wasn't using Zoom right now with my web camera, I could turn on my webcam and record myself asking something or stating something to my students. But you could also put any different text or font into it. And when you're done typing in whatever you want students to respond or interact with, you come down below. Again, big things to consider are some of these things, and I'll point out some of those options. The first one says allow threaded replies, and that just means students are going to be able to continue to comment on other people's statements. The other one says users must post before seeing replies. That's huge. I think one of the big things is we don't want students to just kind of go in, find somebody else's comment and replicate that. We want students to be able to think for themselves, for them to come up with their own ideas, and then thereafter being able to see replies of others, because it doesn't want to just be, hey, I'm just posting one statement. It's more so that interaction that you're kind of gearing for. And graded, again, whether or not you choose to have something graded, we're going to talk in a little bit about speed grader with Ricardo. And so if you are just trying to get started, I probably wouldn't recommend that you grade some of these assignments, but note that you do have the ability to give your students, again, credit, no credit, points, whatever you choose to do based on their responses. Liking, simple thumbs up. So just for students to be able to say, hey, I like that post and I'm going to give it a thumbs up. And then students to do. This is something that I think is valuable. And that's really just a quick little, hey, telling your students, there's something for me to accomplish. I have to get this done. So when you click off that box, when they sign into your actual course, on the right-hand side, they'll be populated the things that you are telling them they need to do. So when checking off that box, it's going to appear there for them. Making sure that you have the dates. When is it available from and when is it available till? Kind of like what we talked about with assignments. So again, just setting that window, if you will. Either you can save it if you feel like you're going to continue to work on it, or if you feel like you're done, you can save and publish it. So again, that's setting up a discussion. I have a couple little samples here that we can take a look at. Here's one, like I mentioned, kind of trying to get to know your students. You could have in this post, I'd like to introduce yourself to the class, and then some questions that they might want to be able to respond to. Especially in the early goings, you're probably going to want to make sure you lay out that in terms of expectations. What am I wanting? So in this case, you said, I had written, you must also reply to at least one other student's post. Again, you can set that however you want, but just knowing that you're trying to set the expectation early on, here's what I expect of you as a class. It might say, hey, you can't see anyone else's comments until you post your own statement or until you reply yourself. So that's what we could have there. In terms of other things, we mentioned you could record yourself, whether it be audio or video, but you could also pull, like we talked about, external links. So let's say, for example, there was an external link I wanted to pull. I have something geared up already. I pulled something about prepositions and grammar. So I could copy that entire URL. I could go back into my discussion. I could set the text, what is this? This is going to be grammar. And then I could post my link in here and hit done. And I have that video, and maybe you have some questions in response to that video that you want your students to discuss. So again, in terms of what you're going to throw out your students for them to be able to interact and respond to is up to you. The last thing I kind of talked about with another teacher, they said, wow, I got started on your discussions yesterday, and I was thinking of some of the ways that I can include some thought-provoking mathematical conversations with my students. So here is real fast, just something I pulled up a slide from which one doesn't belong. You could insert that. You could pose the question or prompt, whatever you wanted for your students. And then you're creating that platform for them to be able to share their thoughts and strategies for either solving a problem or their thoughts and strategies for what they're thinking for this. So you could keep it very low in terms of just even shapes. The sky is the limit in terms of what you're going to pose for your discussions. Now, before we move away, I wanted to make sure you understood what is it going to look like from your end in terms of what you're going to see for the discussion threads, and as well what it's going to look like from you as the teacher when you go in to kind of score some of these, or whether you go into to see whether or not they've been actually new posts been made. So give me a moment. I'm going to share a different screen so that I can show that. So as your students are being able to comment on that discussion thread that you posted for them, you're going to be able to see something appear, which is what? Their statements, whatever they've done, and this is just an image, and then you'll see some little dots, and that's to basically say as a teacher, either one of two things. You haven't viewed it or you haven't marked it as read. The default setting for our accounts, I believe, is to be able to, as you scroll down from the teacher's perspective, you'll see that there's a little white image there. Those blue dots are going to vanish or disappear. And that's to indicate to us, hey, that comment or that discussion post has been read or viewed from us as the teacher. If you are looking at your teacher screen, I'm going to show you what that looks like so that you can see not only how many posts have been generated, but also two, how many posts have been viewed from you, the instructor, and how many are new that you maybe need to take a look at. Let's see. I'll make this one a little bit larger because it's a bit smaller. So when you're starting to see your discussions populate after you have a few of them that are generated, you'll see something right there, a little bit smaller so you can see. And there's a few things. One, these little green arrows, and they're check marks really in a lot of different things. And that's to indicate, first of all, that it's been published. But these other two little numbers over here, one to the right that's a little bit lighter in color, that's to indicate the amount of posts total. So we can see how many students have responded to this particular thread, in this case 4. And then that blue one is to indicate how many have not been viewed. So those are new. So remember we talked about earlier just a moment ago, as you're scrolling through and taking a look at those discussion topics, if it's been marked as red, then that number will constantly be changing. And I almost forgot one last thing to talk about, which is the idea of the ability from the teacher's perspective, how you could either pin or unpin. We had talked about earlier modules, so let me close this for a second. And when we talked about modules, we said that, yeah, modules are gonna house a lot of the things. So if you're posting discussions and you're placing them inside of modules, students will see that as they progress through your module. But if you have a discussion section or tab available to them, they're also gonna be able to see the order sequentially in terms of date that discussions have been posted. But if you choose to pin modules, which I'll show you right now, you could be able to say, hey, this is what I want my students to have access to all the time. So I'm gonna finish this module that this discussion that I started to create, save that. So if I come to discussions, we can see there at this moment in time, I don't have any pinned discussions. Again, why would that matter? It's because if there's certain things I want my students always to have access to, and I want them to have access in the order that I'm arranging it. So all you would do is come over here to the little 3 dots, and you would click pin, and you would have that pinned at the top. That's my pin discussion. And you could change the order that those are appearing. Again, you could do all this work of pinning and not pinning, but unless you have this discussions available on the left-hand side of your screen for students, and that's through settings, we talked about that earlier, it wouldn't matter what you pin or don't pin because they're only gonna see the discussions that you are placing, whether it be in your modules or wherever you're housing them. So again, if you're thinking I really wanna pin things and change the order of that, be sure that you propose that or make that available over here on the left-hand side. And that's it for discussions, at least in this quick little brief touch on it.